Can you guys hear me okay? Let me blank this out for a second. In 1979, Lee Iacocca, who was president at the time, a CEO of a company called what?
Chrysler.
Called Chrysler. 1979, he had a major dilemma. He had to figure out how would he save the Chrysler Corporation. And those of you who might be old enough to remember that back in the 70s, what Lee Iacocca had to do was to establish some alliances and partnerships in order to save Chrysler. So what he did was he went to Washington, D.C. He convinced the U.S. government to loan Chrysler, $1.5 billion to save jobs at Chrysler and to save the corporation. I would submit to you today that we, as small businesses, minority businesses, even large businesses, face the same challenge. That is, how do we save our businesses? How do we grow to the next level? How do we compete globally? And so, in my view, the only way to do that is through alliances and partnerships. It is my opinion, it is my thought that the only way to do that is through alliances and partnerships. And so what we have to do or learn from the Lee Iacocca experience, the Chrysler experience, is the exact same thing. So what I want to talk to you about between now and the time that Lynn and I split for sessions, there'll be a session here and there'll be a session, I think, down the hall. By the way, Lynn was my professor when I was a grad student at Dartmouth, right? And I always tease him because he looks the same way he did 30 years ago, right? I mean, I had hair back then, right? 20 pounds lighter, right? This guy hasn't changed. Amazing, amazing guy. So whatever you hear from me, you can thank him for helping to build that foundation. What I'm going to talk to you about today is what does it take to build an alliance and a partnership, right? In business, but really in life, because if you think about all the great things that have been done in human history, I would challenge you that all of them were able to be done because people learned how to work with each other, right? And how to help each other. I just think that's how it's done. And so this model, this process of alliances and partnerships and building them is really, really critical. But see, everyone will tell you that alliances and partnering is important, but very few will tell you how to do it. Well, I'm a how-to kind of guy. I'm an engineer by degree and background, so I'm going to do how to. And by the way, you all keep eating, please. Don't stop. I know you're being polite. I appreciate that, but go ahead and eat. Because at 1:30 or so, we're going to break for our sessions, okay? So in this book that I wrote called Strategic Partnerships, what I sought to do was study the art of alliances and partnerships, right? It's like, how do you do it? How do you make it happen? So the way I did that was the way that Professor Greenhouse taught me how to do, which is to do research and then do analysis and case studies. And so I went back and I began studying like events in human history. I looked at wars. I looked at Toyota and GM, their partnership. I looked at Hannibal's march to Rome, how he partnered, okay, with the Iberians and the Celts and the Gauls to attack the Roman Empire. I looked at the Tuskegee Airmen and how they were helped to save the forces in World War II, who were the first African-American pilots. I looked at stories in the Bible that talked about, how people got together to do great things. And so I have all these stories and case studies in the book that are backdrops to what needs to happen to build alliances and partnerships. So what I want to do now for this session is to use one of the stories as a backdrop to explain, to give you a mental model, if you will. Can you all say mental model? Mental model, right? At a high level as to how we should go about building alliances and partnerships. So this mental model I want to use uses a story that I liked and really is in the book, which is the story about a man named Nehemiah. Anyone here know a man named Nehemiah? It's not a common name today, but it was common many years ago, right? Nehemiah. So what Nehemiah did was he built this wall, right? But it wasn't the fact that he built the wall. It was, to me, how he got the wall built. Talking about alliances and partnerships, this guy, he mastered it to do some great things. So what I want to do now is to use that as a backdrop, right, to give you 5 points, 5 pieces of this mental model, if you will, on alliances and partnerships. Now, in the session that I'm doing after this, we're going to go into a little more detail. This presentation that you saw up on the screen, we're going to go into more detail on the how. But for lunch conversation, I'm going to give you the high-level version, right? The Nehemiah version, all right? So just as a real quick backdrop. So years ago, when mankind would fight wars, what they would do is the conquering force that was successful, they wouldn't just come in and do like they wouldn't come in and obliterate their enemy, right? What they would do is they would take the best and the brightest of their conquered foe, and they would bring them back to their kingdom to serve in their kingdom, right? So this is what happened to Nehemiah. Nehemiah happened to be on the wrong side of history at that time. His people were conquered, right? And Nehemiah was taken back to the king's kingdom to serve the king. And he became what was called back then the king's cupbearer, right? So what's a cupbearer? Well, cupbearer is back in the old days when the king, before he or she was a king, he or queen, before they were given food or drink, the cupbearer had to test the food first. Anybody here test the food today? In here? Right? So they would test the food first, right? And they would test the drink to make sure the king or queen was not poisoned, right? The cupbearer. So Nehemiah was brought back to be the cupbearer. And so Nehemiah grew in that position. I mean, he became like the man, all right, who served the Babylonian king. And so he was serving the king. He grew in power. He grew in prestige. He grew in authority. I mean, he became the man. He was the top man, the top dog on campus, right? But the fact is that he was still a slave. Even though he had, he had a Mercedes chariot that he drove, and maybe he had, a Brooks Brothers robe that he wore, and had membership to the Babylonian Country Club, the fact of the matter is Nehemiah was still a slave. See, many of us in our thinking fall into that same mistake. See, we have the surroundings of these things, but in essence, we're not really reaching our potential because we have these mental models that tell us what we can and cannot do, how big we can grow or not grow. And so Nehemiah fell in the situation. But one day Nehemiah gets a wake-up call. And what happens is some of his buddies had gone back to the city to check on the condition of their old neighborhood, right? And they came back to Nehemiah and gave him a report. And the report was not good. It said, Nehemiah, our city, the walls are crumbling, the enemy is running over us, and our people have lost hope. The story goes that Nehemiah, when he heard this news, Nehemiah says that Nehemiah wept, that he wept. He didn't cry. I'm going to come back to that. It says he wept. I think that was significant, and I'll come back to that. So what I want to share with you now are the 5 things Nehemiah did, right, to build this alliance and partnership, right, to do something about an issue that he saw that was a problem. How many of you see issues in your businesses, all right, and your industries? I know I do. In this country, in the world, all these issues. We've just gone through a major recession. Some would say we're still in it. Some of us here might say we're still in it, all right, still facing the problems there. But Nehemiah had a different perspective. And so what he decided to do was to do something about it. And so what I want to talk to you about is the 5 things that Nehemiah did. The 5 things that Nehemiah did, right? The mental model is a 5-piece mental model that will give you a high-level perspective on alliances and partnerships, all right? First thing he did. The first thing he did was how he responded to the situation that he saw in that case. He had gotten a report that the city was in trouble, the walls were crumbling, the people had lost hope. He was like, he wept. Lesson number 1, mental model. You and I must never lose the ability to weep at conditions that we see and we experience in our businesses and our lives. Now, I was talking to Mr. Ali about Durham and North Carolina and that kind of thing, and I asked him the question, how much of state contracts or business that is led by the state of North Carolina, how much of that goes to women and minority businesses? And does it represent the demographics of the state? I come from the state of Maryland. We have a goal to do 25% minority business. Have we ever met that goal? We have not. We've gotten close, 22%, but never met 25%. How do you and I respond to that? How do you respond when you see a situation where people of color are not graduating from high school in the right numbers? How do you respond to that? Do you say, oh, this is the way it is? Or do you weep about it? See, I would submit to you, the reason why I said he wept versus he cried, because weeping, my friends, is an emotional response. See, crying is a biological response. Anyone can cry. Your glands shed tears, water, and your eyes tear up, and you cry. But weeping is an emotional response, because weeping ties the physical event to something internal to you and I that drives us to make a change, to fix it, and to commit ourselves to doing that. That's what weeping does. I'm saying to you in your businesses, folks, if you want to be bigger, better, and best, can you all say that? Bigger, better, best? Can you say it fast? Bigger, better, best, right? You're going to need partners. You're going to need people to help you. But you first got to recognize you need help, that you can't do it by yourself, nor can I. We need partners, we need alliances. So Nehemiah taught the number 1 thing was to weep. Never lose this ability to weep. When I see conditions in my neighborhood, when I see people struggling and the disparity in contracts and wealth distribution, I say, wait a minute, this is not right. We must make a change. Weep, right? Having that emotional response to that situation. That's lesson number 1. Lesson number 2. Lesson number 2 says that your present does not define your future. Your present does not define your future. In my company, we're in the IT field and energy field, and every deal we do, we have partners. I do no deals without partners. Everything I do, we're doing solar projects, wind projects, IT projects, and everything I do, we have partners. Because I've learned that my present does not dictate my future. How many of us want to be bigger, better, best? Right? But that cannot be defined, it cannot be defined by where you are today. When I was a kid, there was I had a speech impediment. It was called stuttering. Anyone here ever know about that? Well, back in the old days, I'll show you my age. Back in the old days, if you had a speech impediment, right, you would go to what was called speech class. So every afternoon at 1:30, they make an announcement on the intercom. All students who have a speech impediment, report to room 202 for therapy. Okay, so you can imagine, you know how cruel kids can be, right? Hey, so I'm getting it. It was so bad, they called me Mumbles. Mumbles was my nickname, you know what I'm saying, sister? Mumbles. Like the Dick Tracy character, Mumbles, right? Because there was a problem. If I had let my present dictate my future, I would not be here today. Now I've been blessed where I can speak to folks like you all over the world and share whatever wisdom the Lord has given me, right? But if you let your present dictate your future, then you're limited. That's the problem. Now, I needed partners to help me do that. I had a speech teacher. I had a loving mother and father. See, it took partnerships to make that happen. Because when you want to do big things, folks, you need someone to help you. You need someone to help you, right? And so we learned that your present does not dictate your future. That's number 2. Your present does not dictate your future. I know in my company, we started in information technology. We're now doing stuff in energy. My present does not dictate my future because I've learned the power of partnerships and alliances. That is lesson number 2. Lesson number 3. You must allow your partners, whoever you decide to partner with, and by the way, anyone in this room could be one of your partners, right? I'm going to teach in the session after this afternoon, how you do that. I call it the color ball model. Anyone in this room could be your partner. If not today, tomorrow. But one of the keys to successful alliances and partnerships is you got to allow your partners to do what they do. See, too many times in business, we try to get companies to do things that's not in their core. It's not what they do well. And 9 times out of 10, it doesn't work. It doesn't work out. When Nehemiah had to build this wall, he did 2 things. He had alliances and partnerships with his superiors, with his subordinates, and his peers. I call it the STAR model. You got it? The STAR model. Alliances with your superiors, your subordinates, your peers. You have to master alliances at all those levels to be successful. When Nehemiah says, look, if I'm going to build this wall, I need bricklayers, I need mortar folks who can do mortar, I need folks that can put stick and make the cement. I need all these different people to get this done. I need permission from the king to leave. Nehemiah had to go to the king, say, King, I got a question for you. I have a request. I need to go back to my neighborhood to rebuild it. Can you imagine that? A slave going to the king and saying, King, I need to go. Nehemiah needed permission to get to the territory. He had to deal with the guys who controlled the woods. He had to buy wood and buy materials. Then when he got to Jerusalem, he had to negotiate with the unions, if you will. I call them unions, all right, the people who were there. But what he did was he allowed them to work, one, near where they lived. So wherever they built the wall, they built the wall near where they lived, right? Comfort, all right? And he also allowed them to do what they did. If they were a bricklayer, they laid brick. If they were a mortar person, they did mortar. When you have an alliance, you got to spend as much time as you can learning as much as you can about your potential partner. Because you got to make sure he or she is aligned with what he or she does well. When we partner with IBM, they know where we're good and where we're not. If I'm partnering with Sun Edison, which is a big solar company, they know where we do, where we specialize, and where we don't. Same for us. So we know where we fit, and therefore we can build these businesses, we can build larger plants, right? And everyone can win and be successful in that progress. So Nehemiah learned that. So you got to allow your partners to do what they do, work where they work. But that requires you and I investing time in relationship. Can we say relationship? Right? Because you know that's what business is, right, folks? Business is converting, this is my definition, converting relationships into contracts, contracts into cash flow into wealth. There it is. Business is about relationships. And therefore, if I'm going to build alliance and partnership, I must know my partner by spending time and investing in the relationship. Lesson number 4. You must be able to build your alliances and your partnerships despite what noise is going around you at any given time. Now, what's the noise? The noise are the distractions, right? What would you say are some noise items today in your world today? Talk to me. What would it be? Naysayers. That's a big one. Sorry? Slow economy, recession, absolutely. How about this, please? Fewer. Oh my goodness. He said fuel prices. Amen, amen, sir. Fuel prices, my Lord. Libya, Japan, nuclear holocaust, my Lord. I mean, you name it, we have it. But one thing Nehemiah taught his team to do was to keep working despite the noise. See, that requires focus, folks. When you get into an alliance, if you are really serious about your business and about growing your business, you gotta be focused, right? And the noise that's around us constantly, swirling. You know, in the mornings when I get up in the morning, guess what? Here's a lesson for you. I do not turn the TV on. Why? Why do you think? It's depressing. Absolutely. Mental model, right? My Lord. If I watch the news every morning, I let me go back to bed. Call it a day. My Lord. Okay? So we have to be able to work, my friends, to work despite the noise, to build despite the noise. Because the noise will always be there. It will always be there. And I've learned from my research that people who are successful have learned to filter out the noise, not even let it bother them, all right? Nehemiah did that, and he taught them. He said, look, you stay focused on this thing because we got a lot of work to do, okay? Lesson number 5. Lesson number 5. Nehemiah taught his team to watch, to work, and to war if necessary. To watch, to work, right? And to war, W-A-R, war, fight, right? Why was that? Watch for what? Watch for what? Well, in that case, the watching was watching for who's coming across the wall. Who's coming to take us out? How many of you are watching now in your environments? How many of you here are watching your politicians to see what kind of policies they're implementing that will impact your business? We're in the wind business. Our governor has proposed a major offshore wind farm off Maryland, right? We're in the wind business. I made sure my lobbyists were right there in Annapolis, which is our capital, in Annapolis, shaping this policy. Why? Because I'm watching. Watching, beloved, is not the same thing as looking. Too many of us look. Looking is impassionate. It is very shallow. Watching is deep. Watching is emotional. Watching is conclusion focused. Watch. Watching for your businesses. Watching the environment. Watching these politicians who are making policies that impact your businesses and that impact your communities. Watching. And then he taught them, after watching, to work. Yes. My dad taught me that, son, you want to get somewhere in life? You got to work. You can't watch TV all day, son. You got to work, okay? Work. Beloved, I know for a fact people in this room have no problem working. You're like me. We've worked all our lives. But we got to work smarter in the new economy. We have to work smarter. That's why we're here at this conference, hopefully, to work smarter and to work with each other in a very meaningful way. And then lastly, after watching work, he taught them to war if necessary. That make y'all nervous? War, that term, war. Yeah. How many of you here are warriors? I hope all hands go up. Economic warriors, right? Beloved, look, we will not, those who have wealth, this is a human history fact. Those who have wealth are not interested in sharing that wealth with you. It's called competition. They're not. Therefore, you and I must be ready at a moment's notice to fight for what we have. That fight could be a political fight. How many of you vote? Tell me you vote, please. Tell me both hands go up. It could be a political war. It could be an economic war, buying from people who don't support you or your communities. That's war. Every day we have our staff meeting, my company. I tell my staff, look, we're at war because there's somebody out there looking to take our contracts every single day, every day. Therefore, we're at war. So put on your war garments, economically speaking, in economics, right, to fight the war. He taught them to watch, to work, and to war, and to be ready to do it at a moment's notice. So when they went to the war, what did they have? In one hand, they had a shovel. And the other hand, they had what? They had a sword. Moment's notice, you flip, either shovel or the sword, either one. But I've got to be ready to use either at a moment's notice. And when to use either one comes down to wisdom. To wisdom. You can't always slay your enemy, okay? Sometimes you must talk to your enemy, okay, and reason with your enemy. That is called wisdom. So, beloved, as we build these alliances, I'm giving you this mental model, right? This 5-step mental model of how to build alliances and partnerships, right? Give them to me. Who paid attention? Give them to me. Number 1 is what? Very good, sir. Number 2 is what? Your present, not define your future. Number 3 is what? Very good, sir. Allow them to do what they do. Number 4? Number 5. Watch, work, war. When necessary. That's right. Whoever said that. And be willing to do either as time and situations will dictate. As Farad said in his opening comments, I have committed my life to taking whatever blessings I've been given and leveraging them to benefit humanity, right? So in my company, we have a policy. Every year we look at our profits and we take a % of our profits and we give it away, right? And we're not IBM. We're not, ExxonMobil. We're just a company trying to do the right thing, right? A lot of that money goes to do mission work all over the world. Orphanages in Tanzania, hospitals in Ghana, things in Zimbabwe, Brazil, Vietnam. That's why I'm a poor man today. I don't have no money today. I just give it away. It's like I give it away, right? But it's okay. I'm still happy, though. It's all right. It's a good thing. It's all right. So on one of my recent trips, as I close, we're building an orphanage in Tanzania, right near Mount Kilimanjaro. If you've ever been to Tanzania, you should go if you haven't, right? And we're building this orphanage there. But you got to fly into what's called Mount Kilimanjaro Airport, which is in Tanzania. And so I was flying on KLM, and I missed the flight in Europe, so I had to get a later flight that got us into Tanzania close to midnight. And so we're coming in to land into Tanzania at the Mount Kilimanjaro Airport. If you've ever flown into third world country airports, you know it is an experience at best. It is an experience. So we're flying in, it's close to midnight, and the pilot begins to try to land the plane on the runway, and he's descending the airplane, and the plane all of a sudden stalls. In midair, just stalls, right? So he guns the engines, and he goes back up again, right? So he goes around a second time, and he goes to make an attempt to land a second time. So he's flying in, he's going down, he's descending, and all of a sudden, the plane stalls again. And he guns the engines, and the plane takes off again for a third time. Now, this time he gets on the intercom, he says, I'm about to make a third attempt. He didn't say what happened. He said, I'm about to make a third attempt to land this plane. He said, if I am unsuccessful, I will be forced to reroute to Mombasa, Kenya, which is about a 2 or 3 hour flight away from where we were going, right? So, but you ever notice on an airplane, when things aren't going so well, it gets real quiet. People stop talking. They don't want to talk too much, right? And I'm sitting there praying. I'm going to tell you the truth. I was sitting there, I'm praying, right? Okay. So he goes around third time to make this landing, right? Plane comes down, the plane stalls again. But this time, he doesn't gun the engines. He keeps going, down, 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 and finally, the wheels touch the runway. So we clap and everybody's happy and all that, and we're deplaning the plane. And so, me being from the projects, I could not leave the plane without first asking the pilot what happened, right? Because I'm from the projects, right? I'm like, what happened, right? So I go to the pilot, say, sir, what happened? He said, well, it's real simple. He said, when I flew around the first time to land, he said, I could not see the lights on the runway. So he said, okay, I'm trained to try it again. So he come up again, circle the airport, try one more time, or second time. He tries it again. He said, sir, the second time, he said, I could not see the lights on the runway. He says, the third time I came around, he said, I came down to land and I couldn't see the lights, but just as I was about to take off again, he said, I saw a flicker of a light. And he said, that flicker of a light was enough for me to know with confidence that the runway was there. And so I was able to land the plane. Beloved, I would say to you this afternoon, that's the same way life is. That's the same way business is. Opportunities in business and life normally do not come at you and I as a big neon light. That's not how it tends to happen. It tends to come at you as a flicker. It's a little flicker of light. And you have to believe in yourself. And if you're like me, you believe in God too, okay? But you got to believe in something for you to take that flicker of light and believe it's an opportunity there for you. I hope that this conference, that you all see enough flickering of light, and you believe in it, you believe in the light, and you go to it. And I believe that our businesses as a whole, through alliances and partnerships, will be a much better place because of that. So I want to thank you all so much for this time together. And Dr. Ali, I call him doctor because he's so wise and smart. So, and my friend, he's my friend. Thank you so much, y'all. Thank you all very much.
That's my flicker of light.